Welcome to the discussion of Abhidharmic analysis of alcohol and drug use and its prevention and treatment. Okay, as you know that we are conducting this discussion based on the book A Mind Liberated from Alcohol and Drugs, Buddhist Psychology Manual of Prevention and Treatment, written by Shakya Nanayakkara, that's me. Okay, now the third chapter, we discuss about the Abhidharmic analysis of alcohol and drug use. So what is the relevance of Abhidharma in understanding the prevention and treatment of alcohol and other drug use? Right. We know that Buddha's teaching, the Buddhist psychology, the Buddha's teaching is divided into mainly three categories. That is Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutra Pitaka, and the Abhidharma Pitaka. The Vinaya Pitaka is the baskets. So we call the three baskets. Now here you can see these three baskets, right? Likewise, if we can put the what the Buddha taught into these baskets, right? Okay. Now Vinaya Pitaka is about the rules and regulation of the monastic practices, like how the monks and the nuns behave, and that kind of dharma is there in this Vinaya Pitaka. And Sutra Pitaka is the discourses, is about discourses and the discussions that the Buddha had with his disciples and various other individuals. So the Sutra Pitaka, so we call it, it is divided into various, the Majjhima Nikaya or Majjhima Agama, then the Anguttara Nikaya, Anguttara Agama, Sangyukta Nikaya, Digha Nikaya, likewise. So there are divisions in that, the Sutra, the discourse. Then the Abhidharma Pitaka, the basket of further dharma or special doctrines, right? This basket presents a systematic and philosophical analysis of Buddha's teaching, exploring the nature of the mind, matter, and the reality. So this is higher level of dharma. It explores the ultimate nature of the phenomena and provides a deeper understanding of Buddhist concepts, especially on the mind. So it analyzes the mind, and that is why some people say that Abhidharma is kind of an anatomy of the mind. So if you have to have a very good understanding on mind, whether you are following the Western psychology or any other kind of psychology, I always propose you to study Abhidharma, because so many years back, 2500 years back, the Buddha analyzed the mind, and part of that you will see in this discussion. So what is the relevance of this mind and addiction? We know that the addiction or the alcohol use disorder or the substance use disorder is a biopsychosocial occurrence. Now here there is a part of psychosocial, and that psychosocial can explain through the analysis of mind. That is why it is important. Now the debate is still going on, and I think now it is almost settled whether addiction is a brain disease or a mind disorder. Right. Now, most of the physicians and some individuals still advocate that the addiction or this people get addicted to substances and it is a brain disease, right? And there is no cure, right? So it's a chronic disease, like that is how they explain it. Versus now the other thinking is coming up, like mind disorder. So it is the disorder of the mind. Now, the Buddhist psychology advocates for the mind disorder. So Buddhist psychology analysis of the mind explains how addiction occurs and how can we get over this addiction. Right. Now, this is not only discussed in the Buddhist psychology, we know even in the Western psychology that the disorder, the mind-based thing is discussed at length. Right. One such leading professor is G. Alan Marlett, who was a psychology professor, University of Washington, and he was the director of the Addictive Behavior Research Center. And he wrote a very fine article on Buddhist philosophy and the treatment of addictive behavior. G. Alan Marlett, University of Washington, that you can download this from the web. Right. Now, in this article, he says that he, at a certain point, followed the Vipassana meditation under a great teacher called S.N. Goenka. Now, in this article, Alan Marlett says, I asked my teacher, S.N. Goenka, influential uh, for his teaching of Vipassana, about the nature of addiction. I was told him, now he told the Goenka, that in the US, addiction is usually defined as a biological disease. Okay? Based on genetic inheritance and other biomedical vulnerabilities. He smiled when I asked him how Buddhists view the problem of addiction. Then this is what Goenka says. Yes, addiction is a disease of the mind. So this is reported by Alan Marlett. According to Goenka and other Buddhist teachers, the roots of addiction are in the mind. So the roots, the word roots. So later on, we are going to discuss this as lobha, dosa, moha, the greed, anger, and the ignorance, the roots of addiction are in mind, even though the consequences of addiction often include considerable damage to the body, that we know that it damages the brain, it damages the body, but that Alan Marlett was of the view that this is a kind of a mind disorder. Okay. Once we go through this, that you also can come to your own conclusion. But thank you very much, first of all, for deciding to listen to this side of prevention and treatment, the recovery, the Buddhist psychological way of recovery. Right. Now, first of all, we have to have a kind of idea about this mind. Now, in Buddhist psychology, it explains in various ways, like consciousness or mind. Consciousness, mind, the mental realm of the individual. So that is the mental realm of individual. So there are many terms used, mano, chitta, and vijnana. I know these are difficult at the moment, but later on you will get familiar to these words, the mano, chitta, vijnana. So this is how the mind is explained in Buddhist psychology. What is mind? Now we know that there's a gatha in Dhammapada, the stanza in Dhammapada, Mano Pubbhangama Dhamma Mano Setta Manomaya. That means mind precedes all mental states. The mind is the leader. Mind is the forerunner. Mind is the chief. They are all shaped or formed by the mind. So that shows the importance of the mind. Mano Pubbhangama Dhamma. The mind is the greatest. Right. Now we know what is done with the mind. The experiencing, memory, feeling, right? Thoughts, thinking, the history, sensitivity, sensation, judgment, awakening, being, awareness, thoughts, that all are all are discussed under the mind, which associate the mind. Right. Mental process and activities occur in the brain and nervous system. So that is true, that there should be a physical form supporting the mind. So that is nothing but the mental activities of the brain and the nervous system, including the sensory organs and many other organs also, because we know in our body there are nerves supplied to various organs also. Right. So it is the information processing system. So what is mind? The mind is the information processing system in us, and even in the other animals also, the information processing system. Okay. Now let's come to the point, the Abhidharmic analysis of drug use, the addiction, and its recovery. This is actually the understanding the mental process behind the drug use and the addiction. That is the first thing that we are going to discuss. The Abhidhamma dissect consciousness into discrete moments, chittas, and the associated chaitasikas, that is the mental factors or mental concomitants. So the chitta and the chaitasika, the mind and these mental factors are all arising together and function together. So we will discuss that later. The mind is not a fixed or continuous single entity. Rather, it's a dynamic and ever-changing process. It's a stream of consciousness. That is how we explain it. Stream of consciousness. A mind arises and passes away. So, according to the Buddhist psychology, what we refer to as the mind comprises a rapid sequence of discrete mental events or mental movements, each arising and passing away in an instant. Right, very fast. These individual mental events or mental molecules are known as chittas. So it is difficult to, give a right English meaning for this. So what we use is the moment of consciousness or the consciousness, or let us say chitta. So chitta, the mind or mind moment, that is called chitta. Right. Each chitta lasts for only a fraction of a second before it sees and is replaced by another new chitta. So it's very fast moving. This continual process gives a illusion sometimes of stable, unified mind. Still, in reality, the mind is a stream of rapidly arising and dissolving mental movements or consciousness known as these chittas. It is said that thousands of such chittas can arise and pass away in a span of just a 1 second. 1 second, there may be thousands of chitta very fastly moving, sometimes parallel, but at the same time, at a time, just one chitta arises and it gets only one object. Later on, we will discuss it. When we think or perceive, this process involves countless chittas occurring in succession. In Buddhist thought, a structured sequence of chittas involved in a single moment of thinking is referred to as cognitive process. So many years ago, 2500 years ago, Lord Buddha discussed about this cognitive process. And in Pali, we call it Chittaviti. Chittaviti, the road, the Chittaviti. A single act of perception or thought is composed of multiple chittas performing different mental functions, such as receiving a sensory object, evaluating it, and responding it. So this each circle represent a chitta, one chitta, a momentary mental unit, right? So there are so many chittas, and when one arises, pass away, the other one arises, pass away, the other one arises, passes away. Likewise, it is happening, it continues in a sequential manner. Now, we call this a chitta viti, right? Now, here, I can explain this. This is Bhavanga, Bhavanga Chalana, Bhavanga Pacheda, then the Panchadhara Vajjana, then the Vijnana Chitta, likewise, that you can Sampatijjana, Santirna, Vottappana, then the Javanas. There are 7 Javana Chittas coming up. So, when we discuss this alcohol and drug use mentality, the mindset, we are talking about these javanas. So they are the ones doing either skillful or unskillful activities, right? So these javanas, then the tadarammana, and once again it comes to bhavanga. So it is a sequence of chittas arising and passes away. Okay, so we can say the stream of consciousness. To understand this complex process more easily, we can begin by considering the nature and function of the single chitta. Let us come to the single chitta, one circle. that is called single chitta, and it will sustain only for a, say, very small time called chittakshana. Chittakshana, and arises and passes away, arises and passes away. Another chitta comes and passes away. Another chitta comes and passes away. That's how that the continuation occurs. Right. Each chitta arises with accompanying mental factors, and that is called chetasika. So, chitta and the chetasika. Chitta is the main thing. The chetasika are the mental factors or the mental concomitants associated with the chitta. So, both arises and passes away at the same time. Arise at the same time and activates with the chitta and pass away. Right. So, such as what are these chetasikas? Feeling, perception, intention, attention. So later on we will discuss the nature of these chetasikas, the mental concomitants or the mental factors which together shape our moment-to-moment experience. So chitta and chaitasika actually shape our moment-to-moment experience. Now let us see. Now this is a hypothetical diagram, a chitta. Now chitta is what is arising in a given moment, and it is very fastly arising and pass away. And chitta comes with chetasikas. Now here, the 7 chetasikas that are universal. In any chitta, these 7 should be there. The nature of the mind. Passa, Vedana, Chetana, Sanya, Ekaggata, Jivitendriya, Manasikara. Passa is contact. The contact, feeling, intention, then the sign, likewise that we can perception or sign of perception, concentration, liveliness of that chittas. So likewise, there are certain chetasikas coming up. And further, there are another set of chaitasikas, the mental factors, the mental concomitants, vitakka, the initial application that applies to the object and try to understand the object. That's called vitakka, vichara, sustained application, adhimokka, determination, viriya, effort, piti, joy, and chanda, wish to do. So these mental qualities, these mental concomitants or the mental factors arises with the chitta. And not only that, there are 52 this kind of mental factors, chetasikas, explained in Buddhist psychology, the Theravadic tradition. So these are universals. Mostly it can be either skillful, kusala, or unskillful, akusala. Right. Then if you look at the mental unit or a mental molecule, right, now this is the chitta. The chitta comes with this chetasika or the mental factors, the mental concomitants. And the mental concomitants, there are unwholesome mental concomitants, around 14 unwholesome, unskillful mental concomitants. And then there are skillful mental concomitants, 25, as described in Theravadi Buddhist psychology. They are called beautiful mental factors. Right. Now, we can say the universal 7 in everyone, each and every chitta, these universal characteristics are there, universal mental factors are there. Then particulars. Particulars means they are not kusala or akusala, but there are another 6 that kind of mental concomitants or mental factors. And when there is this akusala chitta, the akusala chitta will have maximum 14 unwholesome mental factors. We are going to discuss this. So when someone use alcohol or drugs, what operates actually this section, the akusala chittas. Akusala chittas. Now we have to dissect this akusala chitta. What kind of intention? what kind of contact, what kind of vedana, what kind of sanya. So we can analyze that. What kind of thought, thinking, application, right? What kind of decision, what kind of effort, what kind of it's not feeling, but what kind of whether it is happiness or that kind of idea, the piti. Then the chanda is the intention or the willingness to do something, right? So these things are, so basically what we have to understand is that the mental unit or mental molecule is called chitta. Chitta always has an object, and it has an object. So when with regard to alcohol and drugs, the object will be either alcohol or such drug. And based on that object, chittas arise, and single moment of chitta, this mental moment, it is akusala, and we are going to dissect this and see the anatomy and discussing the anatomy of this chitta. That is what we are going to do. So chitta arises with chaitasikas. And when someone thinks to overcome his problem, addiction, that is skillful one, it is kusala, then applies this beautiful mental states or mental factors or mental concomitants. There are about 25 such beautiful mental concomitants. So what in the treatment, the transformation take place, right? From this, the mind changes from this unwholesome mental state to beautiful mental state, or unskillful mental state to skillful mental state, or akusala mental state, from akusala state mental state from to kusala mental state. So that is the transformation taking place, which we are going to discuss the therapies and the tools to change the unwholesome mental state to beautiful or skillful mental state. How are we going to do that? Right. So the therapeutic insight, recovery requires identifying the gradual transforming these mental patterns. So what we are doing in the treatment, in recovery, we change the mental pattern. The Buddhist psychology model helps client to recognize that craving and clinging are mental events, not fixed identities. They are not fixed. That can be changed. So that is the main thing. The addiction can be changed. You can recover, definitely. Because what you have to do is actually the changing of this mental events from akusala to kusala, from unskilled to skillful, from unwholesome to beautiful. So these mental qualities can be intentionally developed through mindfulness and ethical training, replacing harmful habits with skillful mental states, skillful mental factors. So that is the therapy. Okay. The changing the mental qualities through intervention. That is how the transformation taking place. Right. This allows individuals to disidentify from the label of addict and see recovery as a process of moment by moment transformation, not a fight against fixed identity. That you don't have to fight with the addiction, but you have to gradually transform from the unskillful mentality to the skillful mentality. So that is the Buddhist psychological way of recovery. Recovery must address not just behavioral changes, but a deeper mental formation, and we call it sanskara, and emotional pain that drive substance use. So that is important. So recovery become a path of liberation from the suffering of alcohol and drugs, not just return to normal life. So sometimes that they have a time of abstinence, right? They don't use substances, but maybe that they are not free from substance, still that bondage is there. So in Buddhist psychology, we discuss a liberation from the suffering of alcohol and drugs, not just returning to the normal life. So the Abhidharmic analysis provide precise, non-pathologizing, and ethically grounded understanding of the mind. So what kind of mind? Identifies the mental factors involved in addiction. So as therapists, first of all, we have to identify what are the mental factors involved in addiction. So mental factors means what? Chetasika. And then not only the mental factors, what are the chittas and the mental factors involved in addiction. Then guide the cultivation of antidotes to craving and delusion. So we treat with the opposite of that, opposite of craving, the opposite of delusion, the panya. Then the reframe recovery as a path, inner transformation and liberation. So that is how the Buddhist psychological purview, that is the Buddhist psychological method of recovery. So it views addiction as a condition arising from understandable causes. So we know the conditions. So what are the conditions that create addiction? Like maybe craving, trauma, social context, whatever. So it is not a permanent thing, permanent desire or moral failing. So we don't consider it a permanent disease or a moral failing, but based on certain conditions. So addiction is based on certain conditions. Dependency is developed based on certain conditions. Now what we have to do? We have to change those conditions. It is not a static thing, right? So recognize that behavior can be harmful without defining the person as bad or defective. So we are talking about the drug use behavior, not that individual, right? Focus on healing, growth, and transformation rather than blaming or medicalizing the person's identity. So now he is an addict, he has to be treated with medication, and that is a permanent disease. No, it is not the same. So the individual is there, but there are certain mentality that led him to this addiction. So in Buddhist psychology, what we do, we try to change that. We are trying to change that mentality from unskillful mentality to the skillful mentality, and let them liberate from these attachments to substances. So in Buddhism and Abhidharma, the mental states like craving, anger, delusion are impermanent and they are conditioned that can be changed. When the conditions change, these things also change. So there is no fixed or essential self that is inherently an addict or a failure. The suffering arises from cause and conditions and can be understood and uprooted through practice. This can be uprooted through practice. Treating people with compassion, dignity, and hope, focusing on healing rather than labeling them. So we don't label them as an addict or permanent nature of addiction. It is also very temporary. Everything is changing, so the addiction also can be changed with the right kind of intervention through changing the conditions that created that addiction. So that is the Buddhist way of intervention with the substance use. Now we sense, perceive, cognize, recognize, think, and conceptualize through the mind. So that is why earlier we discussed that this is a mind disease or mind disorder, not a brain disease. It is not a static entity, rather it arises and passes away, moment by moment, at an extremely high speed. Chitta is mere cognition or knowing of the object. What is chitta? So we can define later on, we are going to define it. Chitta is mere cognition or knowing of an object. Right. Now, there is a relationship between the mind and the body. Without mind, the body cannot sustain. Just as that, without the body, the mind cannot sustain. So the mind means the mental process. That is not the physical part of our body. Right. So just like the two reeds of bamboos, right, balancing and straighten, supporting each other. If one collapses, the other collapses. Just as that, the mind and the body, so they have a delicate balance in between. If one perishes, the other also perish, right? So we know that the mind and the body, right? Now here, the blue color one is our mind, and we have our body also, body and the mind. So there is a delicate balance in between the mind and body, a relationship between the mind and body. What do we do with the mind? Earlier we discussed. So we try to understand the objects coming from outside, the visual, sound, smell, taste, touch. There are 5 objects, and the mind sensor, mind objects are also there. Maybe it comes from the memory and from the mind. And we have our sensors, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. And with that, we get information into our system. And that information is processed with the mind. So contact. So there are certain mental concomitants, mental factors like contact, right? Feeling, perception, volition, one by one, judgment. We will be discussing that. And then what happened? So we after this mental process, right, we perform certain actions. That actions can be physical or verbal. Physical actions, kaya, then the vacha, that means the words through articulating, and even there is a process called thinking also. So that is how, after processing the information, we act through thinking or performing certain behavior. And you can see here the relationship between the mind and the body. Mind and the body. The body consists of this eyes, ear, nose, tongue, and other body parts like liver, brain. So the brain comes under this body part. But the mind is something separate from that. Of course, to have the mind, we need the brain and the nervous system. At the same time, to have a functional body, that there should be mind also. When we die, what happens? The mind disappears. Right. Then the body start decaying. So without the mind, the body cannot sustain. Right. Now, so we get our ideas through contact. So phassa is the contact of the external environment and the internal environment. So that is called phassa. So with regard to alcohol, we taste alcohol. Someone tastes alcohol. Someone see the alcohol bottle. So that is how the ideas or the information coming into our system. Then through the body, we feel dizziness, nausea, all that after using substances, heroin or any other substance. Then we can hear maybe the sound of the glasses and the bottles, and then the nose we smell, and at the same time we think about substances. This is how the mind process starts, right? After that, what happened? When the mind process starts with this contact, and as a result of that mind process, the things occur physically, and the behavior occurs physically or verbally. So physical activity will be using substances. You saw alcohol, and ultimately you use alcohol. You saw heroin, and you heard about heroin. You smelled heroin. The idea came from the mind about heroin. And after this process, mind process, you go and perform the behavior of taking that substances. So now where do we have to influence? On one way, if we if we can remove the alcohol from the environment, this process won't work. So they physically they can't use alcohol because there is no alcohol available, no availability. That is one way. But we cannot have such a situation all the time. So in Abhidharma, we are trying to influence the mind and mind process. So that is what we are going to discuss in this presentation and future presentations. Right. If you want to learn Abhidharma, of course, there are certain good presentations available in YouTube. One such is Bhikkhu Bodhi's presentations of Abhidharma. You can go to these links and get more ideas about Abhidharma, because what we do here is discussing alcohol and drug prevention and treatment we are looking at the drug prevention and treatment and the drug use, the addiction, through the lens of Abhidharma. So the basic Abhidharmic knowledge will be imparted to you. We will discuss that anyhow. But if you want further clarification or study further, so I can recommend certain websites or the YouTube channels like Theravada Abhidharma, Bhikkhu Bodhi, and then there is a very interesting series of presentation, Anatomy of the Mind, based on Venerable Salinder's book, Abhidhammatta Sangha. A lady presents this 69 videos, very nicely explained. And then there is another YouTube channel, I think it pronounced as Thumbingham. So they tried to analyze this Abhidharma in English in a very comprehensive manner. So I recommend, even I got certain ideas and certain quotations from these channels also. So if anyone interested to learn Abhidharma further, you can go to these sites. Okay. Now we discuss a single thought unit, or the thought moment is called consciousness or chitta, and more correctly we call it chittupada. Chittupada means both the chitta and the related chetasikas. Together we call chittupada. Right. Because the chitta alone cannot arise. It always comes with the mental concomitants and the mental factors, which is in Pali we say chaitasika. Chaitasika or chetasika. Right. Chitta, chetasika. In a given second, millions of chittas will arise and pass away. We discussed that. Then we can just compare it with our neural speed. Neurons, the neurons. If you ask what is mind, I will say it is the energy associates the brain and the nervous system and the sense organs. Okay, there is a physical base for the mind. And if you look at the neural speed, neurons communicate via electrochemical signals, no? So signals pass away. So energy, right? Then the signal speed is 1 to 120 meters per second. So that is the speed. Then the neurons fire in 5 milliseconds, meaning you can process 200 signals per second per neuron. So one neuron in 1 second, you can process 200 signals. Just see the speed of that. Then the reaction time about 200, 250 milliseconds to a simple stimulus. When within milliseconds you can think about the speed of our mind. Then how the brain massively parallel, billions of neurons working at once. So many neurons are working in our brain. Estimated operation per second, the brain may perform up to, right, this amount, 10 quadrillion operations per second. See how much. So they happen in parallel. But at one given moment, only one. So although we say it's parallel. So this is the speed of how our brain works, then you can think about the chitta. So, they are at milliseconds. Even in a millisecond, there may be so many chittas arise and passed away. Even in a millisecond. So, at such a speed, the thinking process occurs, right? So that I thought to give some facts from the biology also for you. And one chitta arises, pass away, then another chitta comes, and it also has an object. Like the mental process continues. The mental process continues in that manner. Just to show that one chitta comes, it passes away, the another chitta arises, pass away, the another chitta arises. So likewise, the mental process is continuing, right? So that is what really I had to mention. Then we know now little bit that you are familiar with the Pali, the Chitta and Chetasika. So Chitta is the consciousness, Chetasika are the mental concomitants. Can you remember, according to Theravadi Buddhist psychology or Theravadi tradition, how many Chetasikas are there? Types of Chetasika. There are 52 types of Chetasika, but there can be many other defilements and various other things. And according to Theravada, there are 1001 such kind of mental characteristics or mental factors. But once we can summarize it, and ultimately you can uh, you can uh, you can come to 52 such mental factors according to Theravadi tradition. And I will give the Sarvastivadi calculation also laterly. So what are Chetasikas? The mental factors or mental concomitants. Then let us see how the mind is, Chittam, how the mind is defined. Vishaya Vijananang Chittam. It explains as the which cognizes object. So that impinging on the six senses faculties. So the six faculties are ear, eye, nose, tongue, body, and the mind. Mind call is mano also, the mind faculty. And so cognizing the object. What is the function of the mind? The cognizing the object. Although it is interpreted in this way, it cannot cognize the object without the support of mental factors. The chitta alone cannot cognize the object, but it always get the support of the mental factors, and these mental factors are called chetasikas. This indicates that consciousness, chitta, and the mental factors, chetasikas, are interconnected and interdependent. Both of them arise together. They perish together. They take the same object and they have the same base, right? If it is the I base, both the chitta and the chaitasika associate with the I base, right? The relationship that exists between the consciousness, the chitta, and the mental factors, chaitasikas, also refers to the fact that neither of the conscious nor the mental factors can exist in their isolation or in their own right. So chaitasikas cannot function alone. Chitta cannot function alone. So always chitta and chetasika arise together, and so we call the combination chittuppada. Chitta and chetasika we call chittuppada. Now let us see the fourfold analysis of chitta. So normally any mental factors or mental phenomena, we analyze it in four ways: characteristics, function, manifestation, and the proximate cause. Okay, lakkana, what these are the characteristics: rasa, lakkana, pachuppattan, likewise the characteristic, function, manifestation, and the proximate cause. So the characteristics of the chitta, characteristic is the knowing of an object. Knowing the object. Object is the external thing. It can be an eye object, seeing, sound, right? smell. So whatever the knowing of the object, that is the characteristic, the function, to be the forerunner of the Chetasikas because it presides over them and is always accompanied by them. So always Chitta and Chaitasika comes together, functions together. Then the manifestation as a continuity of process. It although it arises, passes away, it arises, another arises, passes away, but there is a mental process, and the proximate cause is associated materiality and mental factors. So the chitta associates the materiality because I think it's the brain and the nervous system and the sense organs, and sometimes the nerve supplies they are in the body parts also. The body part, the associated materiality, that is the brain, such as brain and nervous system, and the mental factors on the other side. So these are the proximate cause. So you have now got a kind of an idea about what chitta is, right? In the case of chitta, its characteristic is knowing of the object, vijanana. ආරම්මණං විජායන්තේ ලක්කණං චිත්තං. එතකොට ආරම්මන විජානන means knowing. Its function is to be a forerunner, pubbangama, of the mental factors. In that it presides over them and is always accompanied the chetasikas. The chitta always arises with chetasika and perishes with the chetasika. Its manifestation, the way it appears in the meditator's experience, is as a continuity of process. Sandhana. Its proximate cause is mind and matter, nama rupa, mind and matter, nama rupa, because consciousness cannot arise alone. In the complete absence of a mental factors and mental phenomena, material phenomena. So with the material phenomena and with the mental factors, the chitta arise. So now you got a kind of an idea about the chitta. So the developing an addiction or dependency on alcohol and drug is a mental condition or a mental disorder. That is what we discuss. So the consciousness or mind, the incorporeal energizer of the body, is mentioned in Pali Nikaya in 3 cognate terms like mano, chitta, vijnana. So these cognate terms called mano, chitta, vijnana all refers to the chitta, but when we say mano, it gives a different connotation, meaning, but all these refer to the chitta, mano, chitta, vijnana. Although it is used with the equivalent meaning in different contexts, mano represents the rational and intellectual faculty, and we call it manayatana or mano dhatu. Manayatana or mano dhatu. So manayatana is where the thoughts are processing, right? Come to our awareness, right? Manayatana or mano dhatu. In contrast, vijnana represents a field of sense and sense reactions, encompassing sensory and perspective activities. Vijnana. Now, chakku vijnana, in the eye consciousness, right? That is called consciousness or vijnana. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness. So that is the very basic sensation, although you have not identified it. Some sense is there. That is the very primary level of sensing. In comparison, chitta represents the subjective aspect of the consciousness. Okay, according to Abhidharma, chitta is one of the 4 irreducible ultimate categories, with the other 3 being chetasika, rupa, and nibbana. So in Abhidharma, in Abhidharma, everything can be divided into 4 things, that is chitta, chaitasika, rupa, and nibbana. Chitta is the mind, chaitasika is the associated mental factors, rupa is the matter, the material base of it, external or internal. Our body, our external, the other buildings and various other things, that all rupa. And then the nibbana is a separate entity. According to Abhidharma, those are the paramatta dharma, so ultimate realities. As mentioned by Professor Karunadasa, early Buddhism recognized 3 basic principles regarding consciousness. Now, about the chitta, about the consciousness. Dependent arising of consciousness. It is dependent arising. Consciousness does not exist as an isolated phenomenon. That is the second one. And the thirdly, the reciprocal dependence of consciousness and the body, nama rupa, the relationship. So those three has been specifically stated by Professor Karunadasa, eminent Buddhist psychologist. So he mentioned these characteristics of the chitta. Consciousness is neither that which cognize agent, nor that through which cognition take place, instrument, but a process of cognizing an object. So it is not a permanent entity. That is what we say. There is no fixed or one single entity, but it is a process. The thinking is also a process. That is what we have to think. So there are many functions of chitta. Nivariti, obstruct. Chinteti, thinking. Araditi, convince. Pagganghati, hold out. Likewise, so there are certain factors or the functions of the chitta. Later on, we can come to that. Now, we are coming to a very kind of a deep understanding of Buddhist psychology. So, first thing that you have to, you can just take notice of what we discuss, right? There are 89 type of chittas. So when we think about the thinking occurs with 89 type of chittas or 121. Let us, so there is the same thing that we say 121 also. So say 89 types of chittas. So all are 89 type of chittas. Out of that, the sense sphere consciousness or Kamavachara Chitta, there are about 54. So out of that 54, we are discussing about Kusala, Akusala Chitta 12 and Kusala Chitta 8. So there are many other chittas also. The sense sphere consciousness, that is what is relevant for us mostly. So that is called the sense sphere consciousness. There are 54 such consciousness occurs, chittas. Then the fine material sphere consciousness, Rupa Vachara Chitta, there are 15. When someone develops meditation, right, samadhi, so he comes to a certain level of thinking, and that is called Rupa Vachara Jhana, absorptions. So in such an event, they have different type of consciousness than the Kamavachara. All are very skillful thinking. So that is called Rupa Vachara. Rupa Vachara, we have 15. Then the immaterial sphere consciousness, Arupa Vachara, that is also another level of meditation. You come to a very higher level of, you develop higher level of samadhi, and you are developing the immaterial sphere consciousness. There are 12 of such. And then when someone is doing vipassana, right, insight meditation, he develops he is now in the path of liberation, and Lokottara Chitta or the supermundane conscious, there are 8 or 14. So let us say it's 8 to add it into 89. So there are 54 Kamavachara, the sense sphere consciousness, material sphere consciousness 15, immaterial sphere consciousness 12, supermundane or consciousness, Lokottara consciousness 8 or 14. So we are not learning all these consciousness, 89 type of consciousness, but we are discussing only this Kamavachara. Out of that, we are discussing only the Kusala and Akusala Chitta. So altogether, there are 12 plus 8. So about 20 Chittas we are discussing. But of course, the treatment process can be explained through these Chittas also, but it's a little bit complicated. So let us limit it only to the sense sphere consciousness. So we know that there are consciousness, chitta, there are 4 spheres like sense sphere consciousness, fine material sphere consciousness, 15, 54, 15. Then the immaterial sphere consciousness. These are meditative absorptions. To have this kind of chittas, that someone has to develop the samatha meditation. So, but all that is called the mundane chittas, right? Mundane. But the supermundane consciousness, that is the path to nibbana, the supermundane. So there are 8 of 40. So we can discuss this as an 8 supermundane consciousness, or we can analyze it as 40. But this is not the appropriate time to discuss how it occurs, right? Out of this, as we discuss, the sense sphere consciousness is the thing that we are focusing on, right? So there are 89 chittas, and out of that, we are only discussing for the drug prevention and treatment, the recovery process and the drug addiction process, only 20 of these involved. So Abhidharma presents its analysis of consciousness concerning 4 planes, namely the sense sphere consciousness, Kamavachara, 54, fine material sphere consciousness, Rupavachara, 15, immaterial sphere consciousness, Arupavachara, 12, and supermundane or Lokuttara, either 8 or 14, along with Chetasikas. There are 52 Chetasikas, and every consciousness has mandatory 7, that is called 7, occasional 6, unwholesome 14, and wholesome 25. Both chittas and chetasikas arise together, cease together, and have the same object and the same base. Chitta coordinates the chetasikas and thus functions through dominance. So, adhipati bhavena. So, in the chitta and chaitasika, actually chitta dominates the chaitasika, adhipati dominates the chaitasika. So that is the basic knowledge that we have to have about this chitta. So we are coming now to analyze this. Once again, the chittas are 89. Kamavachara, the 54. Then the 15 Rupavachara, 12 Arupavachara, 8 Lokottara. Out of 54 Kamavachara chittas, we discuss only sense sphere consciousness, 54, the akusala and the sobana. Those are the 2 that we are discussing. Out of that akusala, also we are discussing about the lobha mula chitta, dosa mula chitta, and moha mula chitta. But we are not discussing the ahetuka. So that is not that much relevant. It is relevant, but we are not going to discuss that part. And here we will discuss the sobana chitta, the kusala chitta. Out of that, also the kusala chitta, not vipako kriya chitta. Right. So our study of chitta limits to this kamavachara, this akusala, lobha, patiga, moha chittas, as well as sobana, kusala chittas only. So, if you want a detailed analysis of how our mind works, that I recommend you to follow some of the YouTube channels that I have mentioned earlier, and they very nicely explain all these things. Right, Chesasika are mental factors or mental concomitants that influence the mind to be bad, good, or neutral as they rise. So the Chetasikas and Chittas are interdependent. So we discussed that interdependency. Chitta as a leader being assisted by Chetasikas in the task of cognition. So both the Chitta and Chetasika, what is the task of that? Cognizing the objects. Cognition. Right. So Chetasikas arise together with Chitta, consciousness, perish together with Chitta, takes the same object, Aramana, with the Chitta takes, and share a common physical base, Vattu, with Chitta. That means eye base, nose base, ear base, likewise, same base with the Chitta. So those are the characteristics of Chaitasikas. We are going to discuss all this in detail later. So if you look at how Chitta Siddha, you don't have to, just to give you kind of an idea about this only, you don't have to memorize any of these things. So the Anya Samana, or they are called, the Anya Samana means they are not Akusala or Kusala. So there are 7, Passa, Vedana, Sanya, Chetana, Ekaggata, Jivitindriya and Manasikar. That is one area. Then the Vitakka, Vichara, Adhimokka, Virya, Piti, Chanda. So those can be in both Kusala Chitta as well as Akusala Chitta. Then the Akusala Chaitasikas are there. Moha, Ahirika, Anottappa, Uddacha. We are discussing all these things later. So likewise, there are Akusala Chaitasikas, 14, and Sobhana Chaitasika, beautiful mental factors. So actually, studying these beautiful mental factors is also a very beautiful thing to, inculcate those Sobhana or beautiful mental factors. Right. Now, this is how we discussed earlier. This is one Chitta. The Chitta, the 7 universals, and then the particulars. So they are Vitakka, Vichara, Adhimokka, Virya, Piti, Chanda. Later on, we are discussing it. And with unwholesome 14, this is Akusala. Akusala Chitta, the red border. Any Akusala Chitta has these Chaitasikas. And then Kusala, they have the same Chitta, I mean, not the Chitta, but the Kusala Chitta, they have the same 7 universals. Then the 6 particulars, Vitakka, Vichara, Adhimokka, Virya, Piti, Chanda, with the beautiful mental states, beautiful mental factors. There are 25 beautiful mental factors. That is called a Kusala Chitta. So when someone uses alcohol, they do it with this kind of a mentality. Akusala. This kind of mentality. So when someone refrain from using alcohol, and when someone is in the recovery process, he is recovering, his thoughts are on recovery, then they have this mental process, the Kusala. So according to Buddhist psychology, right, what you have to do is that transforming the Akusala to Kusala. Transforming the Akusala Chitta to Kusala Chitta with certain interventions. So Buddhist psychology has number of tools to change this Akusala Chitta to Kusala Chitta. You might ask sometimes, can we do that? Right. So I can remember certain stanzas that Purima Purima Akusala Dhamma, Pachimanam Pachimanam Kusalasa Dhammasa. So there's conditional relations. So there are certain conditional relations. So the previously Akusala Chittas can be converted to Kusala, can be transformed to Kusala by changing the relevant conditions. So under conditional reality that we are discussing all these things. Okay. Now, let us see another general description of Akusala Chitta. The Akusala Chitta. So we know the consciousness, that is the Chitta. Then they have this 7 universals and the particulars. So that is also there. And it accompanies that 14 mental factors related to only unwholesome consciousness. So these are unwholesome mental factors. What are those? Right? Greed. There are 3 roots. Greed, hatred, delusion. So those are the mental factors. Then later on we will discuss how these mental factors operate in alcohol and drug use behaviors, drug use chittas. Right? Hatred, delusion, greed. Then you can see the greed, wrong view, and conceit. So these are mental factors, akusala or unskillful mental factors, the greed-rooted mental factors, the greed, lobha, wrong view, jitti, conceit, mana. Lobha, ditti, mana operates in this drug use consciousness. And then delusion is there. sometimes delusion. Delusion is everywhere. Any chitta, there is delusion. Delusion. Then the shamelessness, right? Fearlessness for wrong, shamelessness for fear, ahirika, anottappa. Then the restlessness, uddacha. So moha, ahirika, anottappa, uddacha. There are 4. Then comes the dosa. Dosa means, right? This is the hatred. Hatred, dosa. Hatred, dosa, icha, machariya, kukucha. So hatred, envy, right? Avarice, worry. So these are the mental conditions, mental factors, mental concomitants. And then the doubt, sloth, and topa. Tina, midda, and the vichikicha. Vichikicha, tina, midda. So those are the 13 mental factors. We are dissecting these. We are analyzing all these things and how it relates to substance use. But for the moment, think about, try to get the idea. So this is akusala chitta. The akusala chitta always comes with its chetasikas, the mental factors, the consciousness. And consciousness has basic 7 plus 6, right? Mental factors related to different types of consciousness, the 13. So they are the desire, zest, energy, decision, right? Initial application, sustained application, contact, feeling, perception, volition, one-pointedness, life faculty, and attention. So those are, we will see the Pali words also. So altogether, we can analyze drug use chitta through these things. Then one by one, how can we change it to the kusala? How can we transform it to skillful? But we know we can start with these universal ones. They are common to both the kusala as akusala, but when they are with the akusala or the unskillful mental factors, they also take the unskillful path. So that is why we can firstly work with these things. It is easy to transform because it is common to kusala and akusala both. Right. So this is how we discuss the kusala chitta, the mental factors, the mental concomitants. Right. Now, another way of looking at it, the mental concomitants, the 14 mental concomitants, the ignorance, moha, shamelessness, ahirika, fearlessness, anottappa, restlessness, uddacha, greed, lobha, wrong victory, conceit, mana, hatred or fear, dosa, envy, jealousy, issa, stinginess, machariya, remorse, kukucha, sloth, tina, topa, midda, and the doubt, vichikicha. So these are the bad mental concomitants. Okay? Negative mental concomitants, akusalas. And the chitta either take the kusala side or akusala side. So when chitta takes the akusala side, it associates these mental factors. And there are 25 good mental states, mental factors, mental concomitants, faith or the confidence, saddha, mindfulness, sati. So you know the mindfulness moment, mindfulness. Other than mindfulness, there are so many other mental factors that you can develop. But when you do the mindfulness meditation, that develops all these mental factors also. But one by one, you can think about and develop. Faith, saddha, mindfulness, sati, moral shame, hiri, moral dread, ottappa, non-attachment, alobha, non-hatred, adosa, equanimity, tatra manjadata, tranquility of mental factors, kaya pasaddi, tranquility of mind, chitta pasaddi, lightness of the mental factor, kaya lahuta, lightness of mind, chitta lahuta, pliancy of mental factors, kaya mudita, pliancy of mind, chitta mudita, adaptability of the mental factors, kaya kammanyata, adaptability of the mind, chitta kammanyata, proficiency of the mental factors, kaya pagunyata, proficiency of the mind, chitta pagunyata, rectitude of mental factors, kaya ujjukata, then the rectitude of mind, chitta ujjukata, right speech, samma vacha, right action, samma kammanta, right livelihood, samma jiva, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and the wisdom, panya or panyendriya. So those are the 25 states of good mental factors. So one by one, we will take and dissect and see how it operates in this. Akusala operates in the drug using mental factors, alcohol and drug use mental factors. And when someone in the path of recovery and when someone is abstaining from substance, their mindset associate these 25 mental factors. And what is treatment is actually changing the unskillful mindset with regard to alcohol and drugs to the skillful mindset associated with all these things with regard to alcohol and drugs. So that is how it occurs. And let us once again analyze it this way, that now you are a little bit familiar. I really wanted you to understand this, and I know that it is difficult to memorize, but once we repeatedly say this, it will help you to understand 52 mental states or mental factors. How many mental factors are there? Later on, we will go to details, but just the numbers, knowing the numbers is enough for this moment. 52 mental factors are there. Then common to another, or both kusala and akusala, there are 13. We call it anya samana mental factors. Samma sabbhachitta sadharana, that means in all. So the out of this anya samana, common to another, there are 7 sabbhachitta sadharana, universal mental factors. We call it sabbhachitta sadharana. Every chitta has sabbhachitta. Every chitta has this 7 mental factors. And there was Pakinnaka means occasionals or particulars mental factors. There are 6, and you know that I will repeatedly saying this because then you get an idea about it. Vitakka, vichara, adhimokka, virya, piti, chanda. So those are the 6 Pakinnaka or the occasionals. And then there are akusala mental factors. So wholesome mental factors, 14. And there are 25 sobana, beautiful mental factors. So they also can be divided into various ways. But for the moment, 13 anya samana, 14 akusala chaitasikas, and 25 beautiful, skillful or sobana chaitasikas are there. Right. Now when someone uses alcohol, they are doing it with akusala chittas. They are doing it with akusala chittas with mental factors, that this kind of mental factors. Moha, ahirika, shamelessness, fearlessness for the doing bad, the anuttappa, restlessness, greed, wrong view, conceit. Not all, but at least some of these things will operate in this drug using mind, alcohol using or drug using mind. When someone stay happily without using substances, so his mindset, we can analyze his mindset, and you will see the kusala, right? These things, the saddha, mindfulness, moral shame, hiri, moral dread, or tappa, right? Aloba, adosa, amoha, equanimity, kaya pasaddhi. So those things actually operates in his mindset. So the message is that when someone uses alcohol or drugs, they are doing it with akusala chitta, and recovery process when someone is in the recovery process or when someone abstains from using substance in such a situation like this, that he has the kusala chitta, the beautiful mental factors are in operation. So that is the basic idea that I have to tell you. And Dhammasangani is one of the basic 7 books that explain Abhidhamma. Dhammasangani Pakarana starts by questioning what is wholesome and unwholesome. Katame Dhamma Kusala Akusala. That is how it starts. What are the Kusala Dhamma and Akusala Dhamma? So anyone studies Buddhist psychology, they start with the question Katame Dhamma Kusala Akusala. What are the wholesome and unwholesome chittas or mental factors? Unwholesome and wholesome consciousness and mental factors in those chittas could be analyzed through the behavior of alcohol and drug use, and with the intention of someone trying to recover from the addiction. So we can see that recovering from the addiction, kusala, and when someone is using alcohol and drugs, it is akusala. Buddha had recognized that using intoxicants such as alcohol led to losing heedfulness, quality essential to achieving realization. So heedlessness in this context refers to the moral recklessness which obscure the clarity of the mind, needed to be understand the boundaries between right and wrong. A traditional Buddhist reason for abstaining from alcohol and drug is that intoxication inevitably leads to the breach of one of the 5 precepts. When analyzed, it could be observed that someone use alcohol or other intoxicants with unwholesome consciousness. So we discussed that. They use alcohol with unwholesome consciousness. Therefore, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, heroin, or any other drug use behavior is not skillful. It is unskillful and unwholesome and akusala. Right. Alcohol or drug use in an unwholesome, unskillful akusala act done with akusala chitta. So that is what we discuss here. Then the associated feelings. Let us go to that part also. When we analyze chitta, there are certain words that you have to learn. They have to understand. Feeling in alcohol or drug use related to chitta, it can be, the feeling can be either somanasa. Somanasa is pleasurable, or aversion or delusion, and the neutral. So pleasurable means somanasa. Either that feeling will be somanasa. Now you can see here that everyone is happily using alcohol. So the feeling is somanasa or pleasurable. So this is the pleasurable feeling, and mostly there is the mental factor, lobha, greed. Of course, moha is also there. There are many mental factors, unskillful mental factors. But basically the lobha is there, greed. So they consider it as a pleasurable thing. Later on, we will see whether it is pleasurable or unpleasant. Then aversion. That is domanasa. You can see his face. He is not happy. So that kind of a thing. He thinks that he is trying to punish the family members, the wife and the daughter. So he drinks, then they are looking at his substance use very unhappily. So either it is domanasa or domanasa, aversion, and it can be no pleasure, no aversion. That is called neutral or upekka. Mostly when the moha, right, is there, or lobha is there, so even with lobha and moha both, that someone, simply because that someone gave him to smoke, that he smokes. He does not really enjoying it, or not with hate that he is using substance, but just neutral. So the feeling can be either pleasurable, the drug using feeling. When someone uses drugs or alcohol, either feeling is the pleasurable, the mental concomitant feeling will be pleasurable, or it can be sometimes domanassa, or unpleasant, or aversion, or neutral, upekka. So that is one way that we can divide the feeling. The chitta could be pleasurable chitta, or aversive chitta, or a neutral chitta. That is divided through the feeling. Then sometimes we have to learn that with the wrong view or without wrong view. Ditthigata sampayukta or ditthigata vipayukta. The ditti means view, especially the wrong view. Ditthigata sampayukta means with the wrong view. So ditti is a wrong view. Someone use alcohol thinking this will help me to forget problems. That is the wrong view associated with that chitta mentality. Or to relax. I am drinking to relax. Or this provides me happiness. This gives me happiness. So with the wrong view, sometimes people use alcohol. Okay. So they have the ditti, the wrong view. So that we call ditthigata sampayukta, with the wrong view. So we can analyze chittas with the wrong view or without wrong view. With the wrong view means that they use alcohol, they consume alcohol or drugs with certain wrong views. We call it ditti, right? Ditti. This is how more correctly you write it, ditti. And alcohol helps to forget problems, to relax, to give happiness, right? Is tiredness, and it gives pleasure. So that kind of wrong view is associated with the substance use, with chitta. Then we call it it is a chitta with wrong view, ditthigata sampayukta chitta. Then sometimes people just use alcohol without such view, without having any view, and most of the time then they have this conceit or mana, comparison. I am greater than them, so I use alcohol. Now this person only poured a small amount of alcohol, whatever alcohol, but he is not drinking also, just holding it and just show off, Now he is not drinking to ease tiredness or relieve anxiety or not to problems, or not that he is using for happiness, just to show off his masculinity, right? Stylish, right? Having the glass. So they don't have a specific ditti. So that is called ditthigata vipayukta, without wrong view. But they may have mana or the conceit. That is, the mana is another chetasika or a mental concomitant associated with akusala chitta. So in Abhidharma, there is another categorization, the prompted chitta and the unprompted chitta. Prompted chitta and unprompted chitta. Prompted chitta called sasankharika chitta. Sasankharika chitta is a consciousness or thought that arises as a result of deliberation, premeditation, or inducement. In contrast to an unprompted chitta, asankarika chitta occurs spontaneously without such influence. So prompted chittas, especially when unwholesome, are stronger and result in more intense actions and karmic consequences. Right. Now you can see that someone is trying to pursue, this man is trying to pursuing this girl to use some cigarette or cigar. Now that girl is prompted by his. So now when he might say, just have this, it actually relaxing. So a lot of wrong views that he markets with this, right? And due to that motivation from the other, she deliberately now he pursue this person, right? Due to others person. Sometimes that she may use it, right? But she doesn't want to. Okay, she doesn't want to smoke, but because of this other's pressure, she thinks she use. Then it is called unprompted. Okay, unprompted. So prompted chitta, These chittas are generated through conscious effort, deliberation, or premeditation, or by being prompted or influenced by others. So this can be prompted chitta. It is influenced by the others. Drink, drink, drink. The peer pressure. So that is prompted chitta. A classical example is making a conscious decision to do something, such as choosing to perform an act or generosity or a harmful action. Even it is even for good things, that is probably it can be sasankarika or asankarika. Unprompted chitta means this arises spontaneously and without conscious effort or external influence. A simple example would be the random thought that pops into your mind, not based on any prior planning or influence. There is no, all of a sudden, that you just use alcohol because it was available, that you didn't want. Then the prompted chitta called sasankarika chitta, deliberate or premeditated use of alcohol or drugs, especially the first time, is typically driven by peer pressure or social inducement, desire for pleasure, escape, or rebellion, calculated risk-taking on or imitating someone, modeling, right? This is called sasankarika chitta or the sasankarika chitta. That means prompted chitta, prompted. This fails under sasankarika chitta. This falls under sasankarika chitta. The peer pressure all falls under sasankarika chitta. A prompted volition, because it involves deliberation and choice. Abhidharma holds that the karmic weight is heavier in the prompted chitta. The individual is more morally accountable because awareness and intent are present very much. Example, a person decides to drink at a party despite knowing the consequence. This act is rooted in craving, lobha, and delusion, moha, prompted by external influence or internal reasoning. So that is prompted. Prompted unwholesome chitta. Seeking help. So the drug user goes and deliberately go and meet a counselor. I want to get rid of this substance use. So that is a prompted chitta, but wholesome chitta. Committing to sobriety. I never use alcohol herein after. Now that chitta coming from the bottom of his heart, and that also have a very strong positive karma, that of course the kusala karma. So the habitual use or mixed chittas there can be. Over time, substance use may become habitual or compulsive. Here the chitta may shift, sometimes still prompted or sometimes unprompted also, automatically. This reflects mental conditioning, a sanskara or volitional formation, reinforcing certain type of chitta. Addiction cycle may involve repeated unwholesome prompted chittas, leading to more profound karmic consequences and psychological enrichment. Then the relapse occurs, spontaneous use of unprompted chitta. So mostly the relapses occur with unprompted, asankarika. In the case of relapse or impulsive use, the act may seem to arise without clear reflection from an unprompted chitta, though the karmic weight might be less than the deliberate act. It still carries moral and psychological consequences, especially if it's driven by the latent tendencies called anushaya. So now you can see someone can use alcohol either with the prompted chitta or unprompted chitta. Unprompted chitta is sasankarika chitta. Unprompted chitta means asankarika chitta. So the deliberation or inducement is there. But the unprompted chitta means spontaneous and occurrence. Then the initial substance use can be an example. Habitual use or the relapse is an example for unprompted chitta. Then this has a strong action and karmic consequences. Less intense action and karmic consequences with the unprompted chitta, unprompted chittas. So you know that after recovery, sometimes people relapse. So that is mostly with the unprompted chittas, asankarika chittas. So they can come back easily. They can come back to sobriety easily because that the karmic consequences are not very strong, less intense. But the deliberate use, okay, with inducement, that is strong action and difficult to come out with that. So that kind of understanding is also important here. Right. Now, this is a basic discussion that we had about the Abhidharmic analysis. We have not come to the chittas yet, but this is a preliminary discussion to understand the chittas. Okay, I hope that you got an idea about it, and in the next presentation, we will be discussing further about the wholesome and unwholesome chittas that works in alcohol and drug use, in the addiction chitta and the recovery chitta, the kusala. Thank you very much for listening to this.